welcome everyone. Warm welcome from us. Thank you for having us as always, Lauren and Craig. Do feel free to say hello in the chat and tell us where you are. We want this to be, as all of our sessions really, as interactive and engaging as possible. We don't like talking at you for too long. We want to get your involvement and get your thoughts and ideas and your feedback. So do feel free as we go through the session to pop your ideas in there, and we'll read some of them out and share them. So yes, basic money management. So for some of you, you may well have been on our first session, which looked at basic financial well-being, the cost of living crisis, the challenges that we're all facing, and some of the solutions as well. And we also went through kind of our 4-step guide to help anyone really understand and improve their financial well-being. If you didn't attend that one, don't panic. We did record it as well. Lauren recorded it, and we'll make sure it's available on your financial wellbeing microsite that we've created, so you'll be able to watch that at any time. And we've also got lots of videos that you'll be able to watch back as well. So a little bit about me for those who haven't attended one of the sessions. I'm Ryan. I'm the founder of Finwell. I've been in financial services for over 10 years and love what I do. It's been more so on the financial advice and kind of financial planning side. But really what I'm massively passionate about and why we set up Finwell is because I think there's a huge need for all the steps before advice. You know, we didn't learn the basics at school. I definitely didn't. And, you know, there's a whole generation of people that need to know how to navigate kind of, you know, money matters throughout life's financial journey. So that's what we're trying to do. Also, the links to mental health and well-being. I'm a mental health first aid. I'm really passionate about that, and unfortunately in lockdown, you know, had personal friends and family with poor experiences with mental health and well-being, and even suicide as well. So I'm really keen to link the two together. I think it's really important for companies and for employees. And I'm an accredited workplace financial education specialist, which is definitely a mouthful, and you should get a badge just for being able to say it. But hopefully that means we know what we're talking about. We've worked with lots of companies doing this. Our philosophy is really these 3 things. Hopefully we can help you by the work we're doing with you on an ongoing basis. We'll be able to help you, first of all, understand what financial well-being actually is. There's lots of talk about well-being in general. But what is financial well-being? You can only improve it once you understand what it is for you. That hopefully leading to healthier relationships with money for the long term, and also better mental health as well, as it says there. So that's our philosophy. We are delighted to introduce, if you haven't seen her already, Justine, key part of our team, almost 30 years in financial services, although you obviously wouldn't think it, and has worked in a lot of the leading banks, is a qualified CMAP qualified mortgage broker as well, and what she doesn't know about budgeting and general money management isn't worth knowing. So is that what you wanted me to say, Just? Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, excellent. But I'll hand you over to Justine. She's going to take us through the agenda and the majority of the session today, but she's got a visual she's going to go through first. It kind of sets the scene quite nicely. So over to you, Justine.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you for having us back today. So, as I say, I'm going to be talking you through most of the session. Ryan's going to keep an eye on the chat box. Do get involved and ask any questions you like throughout the workshop as well at the end. But the first thing just to acknowledge really is kind of where we're at the moment. Okay, we know we're in the middle of, you know, what feels like a difficult time with the cost of living crisis, but I want to make sure that people understand that actually we're not all in the same boat. I hear that phrase all the time. We're all in the same boat, Justine, you know, gas, electricity, food, everything, but we're not. The reason being is because we're all in the same storm. Okay, this is a period of time. It's a challenging period of time, but it's really important to recognize that we're not all in the same boat. So some people will sail through this difficult time, not making any changes to their money management or any, you know, difficulties whatsoever. A lot of people will be making their money work a bit harder, having to make some sacrifices, maybe in a little rowing boat, you know, trying really hard to make ends meet. But equally, there are some people out there right now that are really struggling. They're drowning. They haven't got any life aids to help them. So what we've got to realise is that, you know, we all come from, you know, different upbringings, different backgrounds, cultural differences. And, you know, we've got to appreciate we're all in this together, in this storm, but we're all dealing with it very, very differently. So we're going to focus very much today on helping you understand some of the things you can do to get, I guess, help yourself, if you like, during this tricky time. But as we said earlier, these skills are not something we learn at school. We tend to learn these things maybe from our upbringing or our parents or our carers around us, but more often than not through our life experiences. So I think these things are skills that are ongoing. And you know, these are things that might be able to help us a little bit during this storm. Okay, so we're going to start off with having a look at what we mean by debt and dealing with manageable and unmanageable debt. It's really important to understand what to do in these circumstances. Budgeting goes without saying. You know, 50% of the population are lacking confidence right now when it comes to budgeting. So we're going to go through some budgeting basics and what you want to do and how can you go about controlling your money. And we'll share with you a budgeting rule called the 50-30-20 rule there. Also being savvy with your money. So I don't know about you, but I'm certainly having to be a bit more mindful and thoughtful about how I spend my money at the moment and what I spend my money on. So we'll have a look at some top tips, and I'll get you to share as well some of your top tips that you might be doing right now to perhaps save a bit of money here and there. And then building up our resilience, okay? So we talk a bit like mental resilience, we talk about financial resilience, and it's about how we can build up our emergency funds so that we can cope when things go wrong, okay? And we'll talk to you a little bit about how you might go about doing that, why it's important, and you know what to aim towards in terms of how much. And then we'll share with you some of the additional resources that will be available to you after today's session, and an opportunity for some questions at the end if you haven't already. So let's get going then. So my first question to you, and Ryan, keep an eye on the chat for me. If you or anyone you know was getting into difficulty with debt or getting into difficulty with making repayments, where would you signpost someone to? Where would you go for further support? So let me just give you a minute, and if you want to use the chat box or come off mute, feel free. Where would you go?
Also worth opening it up to Lauren and Craig if there's any people you know or any resources you think of. This isn't a trick question, by the way, because we are going to go through a few bits and pieces, but it's just really interesting and useful to know what people know about, you know, what people are aware of, really. So yeah, we've got already, Rita said citizens advice, which is fantastic, definitely one of the main places, main resources to look at. And yeah, government money helpline, definitely. There are a few, so we'll look at that. And yeah, if anybody thinks of any others, what we try and do on these sessions as well is kind of collate all the resources together. There's some that we haven't heard of, and if there is anything that people think about, then just pop it in the chat. But yeah, some good ones there from Rita.
Brilliant. Okay, so this is I guess the starting point. Okay, so even if you're you know, not struggling but obviously paying back debts, it's important to get a grip of what we've got and understand, you know, how we go about paying down that debt as well. And what I describe here is the difference between manageable and unmanageable. Okay, manageable debt is usually things that you apply for, that you use, that you pay off, you make minimum payments or pay off in full, and you know, it's absolutely fine. But suddenly, and often it happens to people through no fault of their own, maybe a change in circumstances or an illness or a loss of job, all of a sudden that debt becomes unmanageable, and it's at that point that people maybe aren't sure what to do. So here's what we would suggest. And the first thing to know about any kind of debts, you know, most of us will have them. Okay, so there's no shame in having an overdraft or a credit card. Okay, most of us will have them. In fact, 1 in 5 households right now, sadly, are having to rely on credit just to pay the bills. Okay, but what we need to understand first of all is reaching out and asking for help, talking to someone, although it can be scary, is often the hardest step. Okay, and we do need to have a really good idea of what we've got, how much we're paying, what's the rate of interest, so that we can start to prioritize those debts. Okay, now often people might have a number of different things, but might be a little unsure as to how much in real terms this is going to cost you. Okay, so what we encourage you to think about is how to prioritize the ones with the biggest interest first. And interest is otherwise known as APR, which stands for annual percentage rate, and it's the cost, the additional cost that you pay each year on any type of credit or money that you've borrowed. Okay, and then it's once you know what the APRs are, you want to prioritize the highest ones first so that you can pay down the ones that you're paying the most interest on. An example of this might be a number of different credit cards. Understand the ones with the APRs the highest first and look at paying down that one that's the highest first, because you're going to be paying more of your monthly payment towards interest rather than the capital, and that's going to take you longer. Okay, now for some people, consolidation, and consolidation is just a term that we use to pull various debts into one. Okay, and the benefits of consolidation are limiting the amount of interest. So rather than paying 3 lots of interest on 3 different credit cards, consolidating it into one, and you're just paying one rate of interest, and that can make the monthly payments much more affordable and help you clear down the debt maybe quicker. Now, consolidation is not for everyone, so you would want to talk to your banks, talk to your credit card companies, but it is if you are able to, an option early on before those debts start to get out of control. Now, Ryan, we very much talk about support. I'm just going to hand back to you on this one. This is really important that people know where to go and not be afraid to go to.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. So yeah, we asked that question at the start, obviously, for a reason. We partner with an organisation called Step Change. If you have heard of Step Change or have had any experience with them or any stories of friends and family, again, just pop it in the chat maybe. But Step Change are a fantastic organisation. They're a charity, probably the biggest. They help the most amount of people on a yearly basis in the UK. And for me personally, I mean, I've had personal experience with them as well through friends and family and even myself. And we do lots of one-to-one sessions. And again, we'll talk about that a bit later on. But I've seen the impact that people just knowing that Step Change are out there and available, and the sort of support that they offer is not just kind of life-changing, but it really can be life-saving, because obviously there's, if you're in debt, it can be quite paralyzing, really. And the links to mental health and well-being there are obvious. But they can do things such as, putting a breather in space for you with bills and with your providers. They can help contact your providers and set up payment plans. Really, that hand-holding that's needed for people when they're in that position. Because I know personally what it's like. It's really, really hard to even take action, to even do anything. So have a look at Step Change. If not for yourself, we're really kind of on a bit of a mission to make all the companies we're working with know about Step Change, and all the people and employees know about this so they can pass it on and share it. But feel free to go. We've got a page on our website, just /Step Change. There's loads of video content. They've done a really, really good job of getting lots of case studies and real life kind of examples of people that have fallen into this. And it's not obvious, it can absolutely happen to everyone. So take a look at it and do please feel free to share it.
Yeah, and I think just to echo what Ryan said, that the sooner you start to take some action or reach out for support or contacting them, the easier it's going to be. Because if we avoid facing into any kind of escalating debt problem, then it's only going to get worse. So absolutely encourage you to be familiar with Step Change. Okay, now one of the things that, again, we're not taught at school, and our skills, vary. We do lack a lot of confidence in this country when it comes to budgeting. And the reason for that is a whole mixed range of emotions. So what I want to know is, how do you currently budget? Okay, and Craig and Lauren, feel free to jump in and share. What tools do you use? How do you do it? What do you use it for? I'd really love you to know. So pop it into the chat. Ryan, keep an eye on that for me. But remembering here that there's a number of ways of doing this, and some people do it all the time, other people don't do it at all. Some people might feel anxious about looking at a budget and therefore choose not to, and I absolutely understand that. But before we go through sort of how we would go about budgeting, what sort of ideas have we got? Any shares in the chat box, Ryan? Oh, hello, Ryan.
I didn't think that would happen. Damn, I didn't think I'd end up with that. Lauren said good old pen and paper, like yourself. Rita loves Excel, separate account for all bills, which is a brilliant thing to do. Fiona loves a spreadsheet like me. Craig is in the spreadsheet team as well. Fiona has mentioned Hyperjar, which you might want to mention as well, which is a new one we found out about.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's go through then. So the first thing about budgeting, I think, is just, again, taking that step to analyze your income and expenditure, and how you do that is really personal to you. So some people like using apps like Hyperjar. Whoever said Hyperjar, let me know how you use it and what you're using it for. That would be really good, because it's good for kids as well, that one. Some people like a spreadsheet so that they can forecast as well as look back at spending. Other people like me, I'm a good old-fashioned write things down, tick things off kind of person. It really doesn't matter how you go about doing it, but it is about forming a habit so that you can start to analyze your spending. First step has to be all of your household income together. So if you're a family with a partner, don't forget any additional benefits that you might have coming in as well. So getting all that income together first of all. And then looking at your bank statements, so whether that's on your banking apps, or whether that's statements that come through the post. Really important, so that you can see how much things are that are going out. And then we talk about itemizing things, so whether it's a spreadsheet written down, however, and putting them into sort of different categories, if you like. And our three categories here are those things that you need to pay for, so those priority bills, the bills that like your rent and your gas and your food, the things that we absolutely need in order to survive. Then have a look at your outgoings in terms of the things that you want, the nice things, the coffee on the way into work, or the takeaway on a Friday night. And then have a look at what you're putting towards your future. So this is savings. It might be about paying down your credit cards. It might be going into your pension or other types of investments. And if you can try and categorize them into those three, that will really help you when it comes to how much is proportioning. And we'll come to the budgeting rule in a second. Okay. We suggest that you allocate an amount for each item that is within your budget, so that you're not overspending as well. So, for example, if you are you like your cup of coffee on the way into work, then allocate an amount for that. Okay, as an example. And then make sure that things are automated. So setting up I know this might sound obvious to you, but setting up direct debits for all of the bills to come out straight after payday, but also including any credit card or other payments that you might be making as well. Don't forget as well to set up a payment for your future planning, whether that's to pay off any debts, or whether it's building up your emergency funds, or whether it's saving up for that holiday. Treating your future planning just like you would a bill will make sure that it's out of sight, out of mind, and you can rest easy that you've got money being allocated. And then split what's left, or your spending money, if you like, into 4, so that you've got a weekly budget, and that will help you make sure that you don't overspend on those nice things that you want to do as well. Okay, so Has anyone on the call, Ryan, have a look in the chat box for me. Has anyone heard of the 50-30-20 rule? Let's have a look and see if anyone's familiar with this. Or is this new to everyone? Is there anyone nodding, or I can't see the chat box?
Not
not yet.
Oh, Fiona and Rita, they're right on it.
They're on it. Okay. Should we ask Fiona or Rita to tell us if they can tell us what the rule, what it means?
Yeah, feel free. Either of you happy to come off mute, Fiona or Rita, just to explain what you might know about it? No.
That's okay. Don't worry. Don't worry.
We'll do it.
We'll do it. That's fine. Let's go through it. So it's essentially about portioning out your income. Okay. And it is a general rule of thumb. And I explain that, you know, it may be different for some people, and that's fine. And it also may be different at different times. So essentially what we're suggesting here is that you proportion out your income into needs, wants and future planning. So if you put 50% of your income towards those essential bills, the things you have to pay for, okay, 30% towards the things that you want, you know, going out, Netflix subscription, gym membership, and then 20% towards your future planning, whether that's paying down debt or saving up for a holiday. And as a general rule of thumb, it's a really good starting point, but I say general because for some people at the moment that might look very different. So for me at the moment, mine is more like a 70-30-0 because I'm using a bit of my savings now to start to pay some of those increasing bills, and that's absolutely fine. So don't forget looking at each of those categories there, things that you want here, your hobbies, things that you want to think about for the future. And by doing that, you're sort of mentally in your mind, I suppose, making sure that you've got all bases covered, okay? But remember, it is only a guide, and like I said, might not actually fit into those categories going forward, but it's a good place to start. Okay, so one of the things that we're going to touch on in a second is so a bit of the psychology that sits behind why we spend our money and things that trigger us to spend our money. And this, just for a bit of fun, really, want to open up and ask the question, what's the most useless item you've ever purchased? Okay. And Ryan, I'll come to you in a second. So if you think back to the pandemic and when we were in lockdown, you know, we were constrained, we were bored, we couldn't go out. You think about all those emotions that were running high during that period of time. What kind of useless things did people spend their money on? Let's have a look. Ryan, what about you?
One that springs to mind, and I hope they don't ever hear this, but we was bought, it's probably a really good thing, but it was bought for us by the in-laws, and some of you might have one of these, so I don't want to offend anyone, but it's one of those leaf blowers, and I've used it now, and it's brilliant. You know what, it blows the leaves, and that's great, but then I need to get them all up, so it doesn't I need the leaf sucker, I think, rather than the leaf blower. But that's something that I probably would have spent my money on in lockdown anyway, but I didn't, and I've been bought it, and now I'm going to have to pretend that I love it when the in-laws come round.
Excellent. And you don't even use it that often. Brilliant. Okay, we got any other useless items being shared?
No, not yet in the chat.
I bought some weights to do some exercise at home. They've never been used. They're just shoved under a unit.
Excellent. So are they like little dumbbells to do your weighted exercise?
Yeah, it seemed a good idea at the time, but
yeah. I bought some of those exercise bands. You know, those what do they call them? Bands, and I've never used them. Yeah, they're the ones. I've never used them ever since. Jigsaws was a big thing in my house because we were bored and the kids wanted something to do, and I think we've got a whole pile of jigsaws now that we've never gone back to. But that's because we are triggered, psychology, our brain triggers us to spend our money. So it's important for us now to have a look at how we track our spending. Okay, and one of the things that is good when you're doing your budget is to look back through your statements, look back through your budget to see where and what it is you're regularly spending your money on. And you know, if you've already done a budget, this should be relatively easy to be able to go back and say, oh, oh crikey, did I really spend that much on takeaways in December? Oh crikey, did I really spend that much on a cup of coffee into work? So, the whole point of doing a budget is so that we can then start to make any changes or cutbacks when it comes to our spending, and being able to put those items into kind of a spending pot is really good to help us. And once we've looked at it, you can then start to categorize that spending and separate those things into categories, such as eating out, or shoes or handbags, or whatever is your thing. My husband said to me this morning, I've just had a 50% off email at some cycling website thing. And he said, and I was so tempted, but I didn't. And that's because psychologically, when you see bargains, when you see discounts off things, it triggers your brain to go, oh, it's a bargain. Oh, it's the new year. But actually, if you're more mindful of your spending and you can categorize it, it might just stop you putting things into the basket and then going on to spend. Right, so we've got a video as well here which will explain how to try and keep that balance between spending, living and future planning as well. This business of impulse buying, so I'm sure that we've all got examples where we've oh, that's a bargain, or oh, I've been waiting ages to buy that, or oh, I saw someone using that the other day, that would be really helpful. And the way to try and manage that impulse buying is to set mini budgets to avoid that spare of the moment shopping. So for example, I say to my husband, right, allocate yourself a bit of money so that you can buy, I don't know, a new sweat top or a new training trousers, so that way, if you've got a budget that you can spend it, that will avoid you being driven to this kind of impulse spending, and that way you can still reward yourself without going over your spending budget, and that will also help you avoid that impulsiveness that sadly we all have.
I was just going to say that.
Go on.
I just put it in the chat there. Good example. So lots of this recently, with Black Friday and
yes,
all the deals and the psychology that the big companies put into that is amazing, and the money that's spent on the marketing of it all. And I've just put there the sort of line that I always remember is that it's never a good deal if you didn't want or need it in the first place. Like, absolutely nothing wrong with Black Friday and trying to get a good deal if you're looking for something specific, and check the prices maybe before, because normally they just kind of, the prices are inflated anyway, but you can be tempted by things that you didn't actually need or want, and just because there's a discount that it makes it a bit attractive.
It does. I've also seen so often say, leave it in your basket overnight, sleep on it, reflect, do I really need that? And it does work. If you're feeling like you want to grab a bargain, leave it in the checkout, don't buy it straight away, sleep on it. The danger though with that is that often the next day you get an email to say, are you still interested in this item? Here's a further 10% discount. So they're still trying to encourage you to impulse buy. But it is a tricky one, but it's about, I guess, recognizing what triggers your spending, and certainly discounts triggers my husband. Right, now it is all too easy at the moment to buy things quickly, and through things like buy now pay later, or on credit cards, and that's absolutely fine. But back in the day when buy now pay laters and these things weren't readily available, we didn't buy as much. But sadly, that instant gratification and means that more and more people now. So we're trying to encourage people to save now rather than paying later, and just ask yourself, is this something that I really need, or something that I just want, to try and avoid that temptation, because it just makes it too easy, doesn't it, when Klarna pops up in the checkout. I see it all the time. And then it's about your spending triggers. It's very much linked to your emotions, which play a part then in some of the things that you spend. So just ask yourself, and Ryan, I'll ask you what your spending trigger is in a second, but have a think about when you're tired, for example, if you've had a long day at work or you're driving home, you might think, oh, I can't be bothered to cook tonight, I'm just going to go and pick up a takeaway. That's an emotion. That's I'm tired. It's been a long day. That's going to trigger me to do something because I haven't planned for it. Or the bargain. So Ryan, what triggers your spending?
I'm terrible, just to put it out there. So anything really, but mainly if I'm happy, I'll blow caution to the wind and be a little bit frivolous, or my I want to celebrate, and exactly the same if I'm sad, right? So if we've had a good day, my choices might not be great, and if I've had a bad day, my choices might not be great. Definitely tired. If I'm tired, then the can't be bothered kind of mentality comes in a little bit. So it's only, I think, with every element of well-being, it's just trying to be on top of everything, and have a balanced approach. So if we're doing our exercise and getting our physical well-being in a good shape, getting our mental health and well-being good, getting our social well-being good, then our financial well-being kind of works a bit better as well, and vice versa. So they really important at this point, I suppose, just to point out how intrinsically linked all areas of well-being are. I'm not a great example, if I'm honest. I'm quite emotionally fueled.
Yeah. We got any other spending triggers, Lauren or Craig or anyone else? Can they recognise?
I'd probably say if I was in a good mood, I'd probably end up spending more, because I think when you've had those down days, I doubt things a little bit more. So I'll go, oh, I'm not buying that because I'm not sure. But whereas if you're in a bit more of a joyful mood, I'm, let's go here, let's go do this with the kids. And I think that's probably where I'd end up spending a little bit more.
It's a good shout. So sometimes it doesn't matter, whether it's a good mood or a bad mood, or, feeling joyful or feeling sad, all of these things will trigger us in some way and will impact how we spend our money too. Guilt is another one. Often with the kids, for example, if you feel guilty that they haven't got something that their friends have got, people feel, compelled to spend money just so the kids can keep up with the Joneses because all the friends on the playground have got whatever it is. So, it's important to remember there's a lot of psychology that sits behind our spending habits here and the things that trigger us. And the more you can recognize what triggers you, the more you can manage and put those coping mechanisms into place. And obviously setting yourself a budget. I set my children a budget, and somebody mentioned Hyperjar earlier, and Hyperjar is a way of creating virtual jars for different categories of spending, but you can also give your kids like a prepaid debit card, so a bit like pocket money, I suppose, but it means that if they want to spend, they can, but they've only got a certain amount that they can spend, and once it's gone, it's gone. And I think a Hyperjar's a really good app I hear a lot of people talking about, and that does help you manage your spending. I mentioned earlier about, do you really want it or do you really need it? And if you already have something similar, handbags used to be a thing. It's not anymore for me, but did I really need another handbag when they all do the same function? And a few years back, the answer was yes. But it doesn't matter so much. So you kind of learn ways to make those decisions. Now, for some people, this is actually, and this might sound a bit weird, but this is actually a really good way of helping you curb spending. And prior to sort of the world of digital and apps and jars and things like that, we did used to have cash, and people used to put cash into envelopes for different things. And once the cash was gone, it was gone. So for some people, going back to using cash rather than cards and phones and all that technology actually makes people a bit more mindful and thoughtful about how they're spending and what they're spending on. It's something that people like Step Change and Citizens Advice Bureau talk to people about allocating bits, into envelopes, and then, if you spend your, I don't know, your beer money all in one go in one night, then it's done. But if you spread it out over the week, you can go out more. So using cash might be an option for somebody to help you with some of those basic money management needs as well. Now, it's worth us mentioning here that, not only is managing money, a skill that we, need to learn and practice and do more often. And like I said, it's not something we learn at school. If you're also dealing with a neurodiverse condition, or you've got people around you that are struggling with a neurodiverse condition, this is going to have a compounding impact on being able to manage money. Okay, so if here's an example we've just put on here. It's just one to be thoughtful of. If you're living with ADHD, often you're going to pay more for things because of difficulties managing your money. So that might be additional fees or charges. You're 4 times more likely to impulse spend because you've lost track maybe of what you've previously spent. You're also more likely to miss bill payments, 3 times more likely in this example here, to miss bill payments because you forget when things are due. Or you might be late making payments, for example, and these are real life challenges that people are dealing with right now. You're also more likely to struggle to ask for help, if you're dealing with debt or looking to pay down debt. You're twice as likely to suffer from increased anxiety. So the very thought of doing a budget or the thought of ringing up my car insurance company is going to be really off-putting if someone's struggling with ADHD here. And it might be, this is very true information here from YouGov and Monzo that people don't necessarily feel supported by their banks because they're treated the same as everyone else regardless of whether they've got a neurodiverse condition. So that's just something to be aware of. The other thing before we talk about rainy day money is something Ryan, I was mentioning the other day about the avoidance cycle when it comes to money. If you're worrying about money, or you're dealing with a mental health condition or a neurodiverse condition, or feeling really anxious, then you're more likely to react in a panicked way if you're receiving bills or if you know that things are due. And that panic means that we avoid doing anything about it, okay? And we tend to hide, we tend to forget, we tend to not open the bank statements, and that gives us instant relief. We pretend it's not happening, and that pretending it's not happening, that avoidance, then means that the debt increases, and off we go again on that avoidance cycle. So it's one to be aware of, if you are finding that challenging. Go on, Ryan, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, Fiona's put in here some areas of neurodiversity and his dad, and the struggle for money is real. And I've just put that we're completely seeing more and more of this, really, with the one-to-one sessions that we do and other group sessions. And you just saying there about that avoidance cycle, Justine, I've had personal experience with that, and maybe we should add some slides on to another one of this, because there's so many different ones. And I've had it, letters coming through the door, that noise, that sound of just a letter hitting the floor, then you see that one of them's brown. Oh my God, then you go into overdrive. Other ones for me personally, not wanting to look at my balance, just really like one eye open, one eye shut type of thing. And definitely not getting a statement when you get cash out. You don't want to know, you just want to get the money out. Hopefully it goes in. The dread and the anxiety of kind of at the checkout, at the supermarket, is the card going to work? And we've had many times when it doesn't, then you have to try and transfer money over or put the shopping back. It's bad. So we get it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and impacting more and more people, I would say. Certainly we see it a lot, don't we, in the work that we do. So one of the things that we come across is this term called financial resilience. And this is essentially about building up some rainy day funds that you can fall back on in an emergency. So does anyone have any emergency funds or rainy day funds, or does anyone know how much money we should be aiming? Appreciate it's not easy, but aiming to have. Does anyone know? Let's see if we can get the chat box there. But I'm going to go through with you then.
I use the Save the Change to build up our rainy day.
And how does that work for you? Does it work well? Just share what Save the Change is, Lauren.
So it's whenever you're spending something with your bank card, it'll round it up to the nearest pound and put the difference into your savings account. So I find it builds up so quickly, and you don't even realise that money's gone out of your normal account.
Yeah.
So I think, to me, it's a really easy way of saving a little bit of money, and it adds up.
I love it. I've got it on my bank account as well, Lauren, and it's called unconscious saving, because you're not really doing anything, it's doing it for you. So it's every time you use your debit card, it rounds it up to the next pound, and that pence goes across into a nominated savings account, and it just happens automatically. Before you know it, you've got an extra 20-30 quid at the end of the month. Often called, you called it save the change, it's often called rounding up functions as well, a lot of the high street banks, but that's a really good way of saving up rainy day money. But essentially we need to be building up a slush fund or a rainy day fund, and the way to go about it is to start off with looking at your monthly household outgoings, the essential things, okay, the real priorities, the mortgage payment, the monthly gas, electricity, and food, the things that we can't kind of live without. So here's the example of, let's say, all three of those add up to 1,500 a month. Then what you want to do is start to work towards that, to start building up at least 1 month's worth first, and then start to try to save up towards 2 and 3 months worth, okay? And eventually over time, 6 months, I know that sounds an awful lot, but 6 months worth over time will really mean that you don't have to worry if something goes wrong. Okay, so if the car breaks down, or the boiler breaks, or something bigger than that, maybe you lose your job or made redundant without realizing, these things happen throughout your life. So it's really important to try and build up some kind of rainy day fund. And the easiest way to do that, if you can, within your budget, is to set up an amount that's affordable to start to put away towards that emergency fund. Some people like having separate pots, or hyper jars, a great example of that. I have a separate account that's linked to my bank account, and I try, that doesn't always work, but try and put a dedicated amount towards that in my budget, just like I would to pay my food. And that, if you can get into the habit of doing that and setting up direct debits for these kind of savings, you won't notice it. Okay. Similarly, if you do it at the start of the month or just shortly after you've been paid, it's just another bill. So does anyone else create separate accounts or separate pots of money for different things, or emergency funds? Anything in the chat box there, Ryan?
Yeah, well, first of all, well done, Rita. Yes, you put sort of 6 months worth of salary is a good starting point. So definitely, I've just put in there, yeah, absolutely separate account. The amount of feedback we've had where people did separate it and it was just on the same card or on the same account, and it's just too easy. The banks have done too good a job to just sort of transfer money back. So if a lot of people maybe save up their emergency money in a separate account that they even have to go to the bank and physically, change it over or get it out. It's just to try and avoid that sort of dipping into it type of mentality, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we shouldn't kid ourselves that these things happen, don't they? So, things go wrong, things break down. Often it all happens at once. I know you often say to me, don't you, Ryan, that everything in your kitchen breaks down at the same time.
Yeah, that's a real life example, and it just shows you. I don't know how this works in the world, but when you expect to have it and not need it kind of thing. And I've had it where I had to have a certain amount when I was on the advising side, and nothing went wrong. Absolutely nothing went wrong. Then we started to dip into it. Then lockdown happened and a few other challenging times. And that's when we had the car, the boiler, the dishwasher, and then the microwave. The microwave breaking. So yeah, it all. I'm sure they all gang up with each other and decide to break at the same time. But.
Yeah, and I often think that having an emergency fund actually has a positive impact. If you can work towards building it up, it has a positive impact on your mental health as well, and gives you that kind of what do they call it, like a shock absorber on a car. You know, you can rest easy in the knowledge that if something goes wrong that needs replacing or broken, you know, you've got something set aside, and it eases that anxiety. I appreciate that's quite tricky for a lot of people right now with the rising cost of living, but it's always something to work towards, I think, throughout your life, because these things will crop up. Absolutely. Okay, where are we at? So in terms of, you know, we've gone through a whole host of things, haven't we, in terms of how we go about our money management skills. So this is going to be a visual that's going to be available to you, covering off each of the different kind of sections that we've touched on today. So if you want to know a bit more about managing debt, you can see the little QR code on there, and that will take you through to some videos that will tell you a little bit more about how to do that, and also getting in touch with Step Change as well. If you want to know a bit more about budgeting or the 50-30-20 rule, similarly, if you want to understand a bit more about your spending habits and how to manage those a bit closer, you know, the really good resource that will be available. And Lauren, you've got this, I think, for your teams as well, alongside the microsite for you guys. So you know, depending on what you know, journey you're on or what area you want to focus on, there's lots of resources there, lots of short video clips to you know, help upskill yourself in terms of your money management basics, as well as the cost of living guide, with some top resources and links there to help people as well. Now's a great time for us to stop the presentation, I think, Ryan, and just see if anyone's got any questions about anything that we've touched on today, really.
Yeah, brilliant. Lots in the chat. There's again, some of the links in the resource. We're always going to be adding to that cost of living guide. That's kind of our central resource, really, for all of these websites and apps and different things. So do feel free to take that. Just a quick favour to ask before any questions, and give you a bit of time to maybe think of anything you want to ask us. We've got a feedback link. I think Justine might have it, pop it into the chat, and we would really love to get your feedback. Kind of all of our sessions, and we've done hundreds of these now to kind of thousands of employees. They've kind of got to this point based on the feedback that we've heard. So it's really to want to know, you know, what you liked best, what you'd like us to do more of, what you didn't like perhaps, and we will take that on board. It's all completely anonymous, so just whatever you want to say, you know, there's no names or email addresses or anything like that. So please do take a moment to click on that whenever you want to fill it out. If you click on it, and then you can, you know, put your answer. It takes about a minute or two just to give us to that. But yeah, I'll hand you back to Lauren. Thank you very much, Justine. And if there are any questions, then do feel free.
Yes, thank you very much, T-Boff. That's really helpful. It's good to know what other people are doing as well. It's nice to get those little tips from others. Like we said, we will be putting the recording on Campus, which is our intranet page, so you can watch it again, and we will be making all the videos and the links available to everybody as well. And we will be putting together a plan to come to site for one-to-one sessions, so watch out for more information on that.
Yeah, see us in real life.
Yes.
Looking forward to it. Going to be exciting. Yeah, looking forward to that. If just as well, you know, this is we're completely aware it's quite a sensitive subject, and kind of if anybody does have any questions or wants to pick our brains about anything, we'll again share our details with Lauren and Craig and the team. And if you want to reach out, then feel free to do that. And we're also, for those that are on LinkedIn, we're very active on LinkedIn. You can connect with any of our team and ask us questions in confidence, or follow our page. We've got a Finwell page on LinkedIn, and we try and share useful content on that as well. So feel free to check that out.